little sunburnt, but I started reading on this and I even watched an old video that I had made on this topic. It didn't get as many views, but I think this has the capacity to be reinvented in something that gives individuals the ability to understand what voyeurism is and how it can lead to stalking and eventually lead to serial killers. And I even have 53 serial stalkers that became killers that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about all 53 because I don't want to go that long tonight, but hopefully we'll get through some of them. And any new people in the chat, let's see. Rebecca Bruce, how you doing? How you doing from North Carolina? You said you're a nurse from North Carolina. Thank you for your service. Rondi, you're here. Aquarius, PKC, Paula, and anybody else that I'm missing. I don't see anybody else at the moment. So, we're not really going to talk about a case tonight, but you can address this to any case you want to. So, I'm not going to talk about cases that Carla's in the chat. Carla's in the chat. Welcome, Carla. Um, you can address this topic to any cases that we've been talking about on this channel, anything that we've talked about, and just kind of get the information that gives you the understanding of what a voyeur is. And if you have any young prepubescent boys or girls and they start exhibiting this type of behavior, you can know exactly what to look for. Not saying that they're all going to turn out to be serial killers, but it can give you an insight on a behavior that could or could not be potentially harmful in the future. So, let me go ahead and get going here and start the program. And I'm going to be doing some reading, so I hope that you guys follow along with what I'm talking about. Okay, let me put myself down at the bottom here. Can y'all see that okay? Okay, it says, let me make this a little bigger. Okay, it says beyond looking when voyeurism leads to criminal behavior. And in some of the cases that you follow, um, voyeurism is often talked about. It's often talked about because it is a behavior that is maladaptive to normal living. And that basically means that whenever something starts out kind of small, they usually call that acute in the medical field. I'm not a medical field person, but I've had acute bronchitis, acute this, acute that, and they've always told me, hey, this is something that is an onset that comes along really quickly and you're not really prepared for it. So if somebody becomes a voyeur, let's see what it says. You probably know someone who does not miss a chance to catch an eyeful. From looking into windows of neighbors to openly oogling women at the gym to indulging in a steady diet of adult entertainment, some people are natural born voyeurs. You avoid these people when you can and keep your shade drawn at night if you have one on your block. Some neighborhood peeping toms might also psychologically examine, meet the clinical diagnosis of voyeuristic disorder. So it's not only something that is unhealthy, it's also a disorder because it's been um, placed in the DSM-5. So it's clinically something that is abnormal or maladaptive. Rebecca, would you agree with this? You are a nurse, so would you agree that voyeurism is a problem early on? I don't know if it really crosses into the nursing part, but Would have you heard of anything like that, Carla? Can you chime in if you want to on that? So let me continue to read here. It said, the Psychology of Prowling and Peeking. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, DSM 5, provide diagnostic criteria for voyeuristic disorder, 302.82. The first one requires recurrent and intense sexual arousal from observing an unsuspecting person who is naked in the process of disrobing or engaging in sexual activity, as manifested by fantasies, urges, or behaviors over a period of over 6 months. So this behavior has to go over 6 months, you know, 6 months. And usually the voyeurism occurs covertly, it's something that is being done without the individual knowing. The second criterion requires acting on such urges with a non consenting person that experience clinically significant distress or impairment in a social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning as a result of the sexual urges. The third criteria required that the person experiencing the requisite arousal or acting out experienced urges to at least be 18 years old, recognizing that sexual curiosity is common during adolescence and puberty. In terms of gender related diagnostic issues, voyeuristic disorder is described as more common in men than women. So there you have it. Yet individuals who do not meet the clinical definition may nonetheless act upon voyeuristic urges, engaging in intrusive, harmful, even criminal behavior. So let me break this down a little bit, okay? So if an individual starts looking in the window of the neighbor, okay, and just happened to do it one time, and that's it. They just, they were curious, not a big deal. But if it becomes habitually every night, and it even escalates to sneaking out, lying about their whereabouts, becoming something that's intrusive to other people, even breaking the law, then this is a problem because it meets three of the criteria that I just described. So when we're looking at adults that are voyeurs, it's no longer just an innocent peeping tom. It could be actually looking for a victim. So let's continue on. It says voyeurism as gateway behavior, invasion of privacy from visual to digital. For some privacy violators, strategizing a peep show is not good enough, capitalizing on the fact that every modern device now has a camera and drones are increasingly available as well. Many voyeurs seek to memorialize the unauthorized view. You know, reading that, I would have never in a million years, never in a million years, thought of a drone as a way to peep on somebody. How about you guys in chat? Would you have ever thought that? I mean, would that have crossed your mind if you wouldn't have heard me read it? Or have you heard about it in other situations? That just blew my mind. It just blew my mind just there. So it says spying on unsuspecting individuals in private areas ranging from dressing room to locker room to bedrooms is easier than ever before. Upskirting, for example, the act of snapping a photo up a woman's skirt without her consent has received much attention over the last several years as states struggle to identify and amend laws that address such behavior, demonstrating how technology can outpace the law in the digital age. Beyond invading the privacy of unsuspecting victims, some voyeurs also engage in sexual assault. Here we go. So they take it to the next level. Instead of just looking and stalking, that's just not enough for them. I'm sorry about that, Rondi. You said I have, and the guy arrested. I'm sorry about that. I'm glad that you got him arrested. Um, So let's continue on. It says from observation to assault. I do want to mention that there are some things spoken here that other channels don't speak about. It's open and I'm very graphic at times. So do understand that sometimes there is trigger warnings. I might forget to say that, but hopefully we're all adults in here and we can all take it. Okay. It says varieties of intrusion, exhibitionism, and voyeurism. Recognize that voyeurism requires objectification and a predatory in nature because it involves watching someone without the person's knowledge or consent. They also discuss research demonstrating a link between the voyeurism and the crime. They explained that a significant percentage of criminals who could commit sexual assaults report a history of voyeurism or exhibitionism. They note that overlapping sexual deviations coupled with an escalation in behavior lend support to a model of sexual addiction. There we go. Recognizing that such addiction usually involves multiple compulsive behaviors as opposed to only one type. Explained that there are convictions and clinical diagnosis for exhibitionism and voyeurism, likely due to the overt nature of exhibitionistic behavior. Convictions yield useful data for researchers who have been working for years to identify risk behaviors and warning behavior that could help predict how sexual proclivities might lead to sexual crime. So, let me tell you, when you're at the splash pad or you're at the pool, you have to be very mindful of your surrounding. This is a great comment right here. And I was going to get to this because I was watching a little bit of it earlier. It says, we see this in the cases against Stearns, Huberman, and Koberger. And yes, we heard of it. Drones are the newest tool they have. And that was the end of that comment. So, yeah, it escalates. It escalates from, and you don't even have to necessarily be the peeping Tom in the neighborhood. You could be one of these individuals that decide to use this deviant behavior while you're at work, while you're at the gym, while you're at a grocery store or Walmart or Target or anything like that. And use your digital camera or whatever to be a voyeur and to be able to take your reward home with you by a picture or video. Before it was usually just a mental image, but now you have the addition of cell phones and digital cameras that can fit right into your pocket. We have heard about these cases where stalking or voyeurism starts out and it leads to potential stalking. It said decades ago, researchers sought to compare the personality profiles of voyeurs and exhibitionists who also commit sexual assault with those who don't. In a study entitled Comparison to MMPI Profiles of Assaultive and Non-Assaultive Exhibitionists and Voyeurs, Moncrief and Pearson compared a subset sex offenders in a clinical unit who have also engaged in voyeuristic exhibitionist behavior in a group to had not committed sexual assault. They discovered that the two groups had different MMPI profiles. They concluded their study by suggesting that examining the MMPI profile of apprehended voyeurs and exhibitionists might help predict the likelihood of future sexually assaulted behavior. Said proceed with caution. Not all voyeurs engage in physical sexual assault, and many assaulters are not voyeuristic. Yet the concern that prudent invasion of privacy may lead to criminality at the developing body of research as the issue continues to be enormously relevant today. Well, that was quite interesting. And it came from Psychology Today. So if you want to go and reread the article, the individual that wrote it, her name is Wendy L. Patrick. She's a PhD. and a behavioral analyst. So she's able to give a professional insight on the voyeurism. So what do y'all think about that? I mean, chat, I want you to give me your your feedback right now before I start on this next section. What do y'all think about the voyeur? Have you ever caught a peeping tom? Um have you ever dated somebody with a sexual addiction? Did you ever have you ever been married to someone with a sexual addiction? Did you ever have you ever been around somebody who has the tendency to constantly be checking out people maybe not even of age, because all this goes in different spectrums. It's not just about adult checking out adult. This can also be, as sick as it is, adult checking out underage children. You know, yes. I think it's a warning, a prelude to a dark personality. I agree. Because think about it. Did y'all ever watch that movie, The Lovely Bones? And I know it's a movie, but that's one of my favorite movies. Um, and in that movie, if you haven't watched it, there was an individual that lived next door to these two girls, and he was constantly watching one of the girls behind the bushes, like he was cutting the bushes. He was friendly to them. He was doing all this stuff. And I'm not going to ruin the movie for you, but he ends up entrapping one of them. And that's all I'm going to tell you. It's called The Lovely Bones, and it's powerful. It has Mark Wahlberg in it, and it has some other actors in it, but it's really powerful. Rondi says the drone guy arrest wasn't me, but the guy checked out bathroom windows of a neighbor. Wow, I love it. Stephen King, the book is amazing. Okay, have to watch it. It's a very good show. I mean, it's kind of sad, but it gives you an insight on how voyeurism and stalking behavior and the urge, the opportunity, all the things that we talk about in true crime, how it manifested itself to this one crime. I think I've seen it before, but it was a long time ago. Yeah, it's an older movie, but it's one of my favorites. And I guess that's why it's a favorite because it does manifest itself with a lot of different situations that we talk about in true crime. It does the little girl's ghost help. Come on, no spoiler alert. All right, let's get to the next portion here. We're going to talk about 53 serial killer stalkers. And some of you might even know some of these. I was shocked when I read some of this stuff because it does break it down for you. And it's going to give you an insight on exactly what I'm talking about tonight. Okay? Um, I know, Aquarius, I'm just messing with you. Um, so let's go ahead and go with this. Let's see who number one is. Pedro Lopez, the monster of the Andes. Let's see what Pedro's about. It says Pedro Lopez was a Colombian serial killer and rapist known as the monster of the Andes. Lopez targeted young girls in Colombia, Ecuador between 1969 and 2002. He was arrested in 1980 and later convicted in 1983 of killing 110 young girls in Ecuador. Lopez confessed to killing at least 300 victims. In 1994, Lopez was released from an Ecuadorian prison. He was rearrested and sent to a Colombian psychiatric hospital. Lopez was released from the psychiatric hospital in 1998. In 2002, Lopez was suspected of the murder by Colombian authorities. That's intense. That's intense, guys. 110 young girls. 110. Wow. No wonder he's number one. Let's see what his profile. Okay, it says Lopez, a heterosexual pedophile male citizen of Colombia. Lopez completed 7 years of school, no degree received. Lopez never married. He had no children. Wow. Let's see who number two is. And like I said, there's some trigger warnings here, but I want you guys to understand that we're just talking about this to kind of give insight on what I'm talking about here. So if it gets too bad, I'll just click it off and we'll talk about something else. It says Ahmad Siraji, an Indonesian serial killer known as a sorcerer, Datuk Merinji and Dukan AS. Siraji was convicted of strangling at least 42 women and girls in a series of ritual slayings he believed would give him magical powers. In order to achieve even more magical power, he drank the victim's saliva, having to reach a total of 70 victims before ascending into a dukkhan, as foretold by a dead father in a dream. Some victims were even charged money in exchange for a magic ritual to be performed. Instead, Siraji would bury the victim up to their waist in a cornfield and strangle them with a cable. Once dead, Siraji would dig up the victim to undress and rebury the victim naked. He was executed by a firing squad in 2008. His profile says heterosexual male citizen of Indonesia. He married to three wives, all sisters. He had no children mentioned. Can you, hey, chat, let me ask you guys this. Is there, I mean, can you, in your wildest dreams, if I wouldn't be reading this, can you, in your wildest dreams, ever imagine that there was this kind of evil in the world? I know this guy is evil. I know his story, so a little bit, but I'm gonna read it anyways. I mean, just reading this, Rondi said so he was crazy as fuck. Yeah, pretty much. John Wayne Gacy, Pogo the Clown, the Killer Clown, active for 7 years, 1972 to 1978 in the U.S. John Wayne Gacy, an American serial killer and rapist known as Pogo the Clown. Gacy was known to have sexually assaulted, tortured, and murdered a minimum of 33 teenage boys and young men between 1972 and 78, 26 of whom he buried in the crawl space of his Chicago home. He was known as the Killer Clown due to him entertaining children at social events, dressed in a self devised clown costume. While in prison, Gacy took up painting as a hobby as means of making money. The paint box used to create the art is on display at the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection in 1994. So, John Wayne Gacy, Pogo the Clown. Have you guys heard of that person? Let's see what his profile says. John Wayne Gacy, a bisexual male, citizen of the U.S., with religious ties or beliefs connected with the Catholic Church religion, organization, or belief system. He took an intelligence quotient test before or after his crime. John Wayne Gacy had an IQ of 118. He completed 12 years of school, received a GED. He gained part of his education while attending Northwestern College. He married Mary Lynn Myers on August 31st, 1964, married Carol Huff on July 1st, 1972. He had two children. I'm quite naive on IQ tests. If you guys can tell me a little bit, is 118 pretty high? Is that genius level? Carla says, I hate clowns. I didn't realize there were so many crazy in the world until I started watching true crime. Actually, I guess I did in small portion. 48 hours, 2020 Dateline. Yes. So 118 is genius level, right? Anything, I think 120 at the highest you can go. So this man had 118. So to say that serial killers are ignorant, you know, here's another one. I'm petrified of clowns. Aquarius, really? Oh, and yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. But think about it, guys. 118, 120 genius level. And here's a guy who entertained small children, teenage boys. If I remember correctly, he owned a business. And and that's where he would get his victims is he would hire young boys, and I'm not certain what kind of business it was. I think it was like maybe a construction business, maybe. So he would hire young boys and he would keep them in his cubbyhole at his house once he murdered them. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. What do you think about that one, guys? John Wayne Gacy. He's a popular one. You can see all his stuff on Hulu, Netflix. All the stuff like that. Let's see if we can get another one um, from around here. Let's do number 5. I don't really know number 4 that well. Let's do number 4 or 5. Adolfo Constanzo. I think I've heard of this guy, the witch doctor, El Padrino. Active for 4 years, 1986 to 1989, United States, Mexico. Adolfo Costanzo, Cuban American serial killer, drug dealer, and cult leader of the narco Satanists. Constanzo sexually assaulted and killed drug dealers and used their body parts for religious sacrifice ceremonies in an old warehouse near Matamoros. Many of his victims' body parts were cooked in a large pot called a ningaga. I remember this guy. I know why I remember him. Anybody, um, does anybody remember the Matamoros killings, where there was a group of college kids that went across the border in Matamoros, Mexico? One of the college kids got picked up by a female and two guys. Um, he he got away from his college friends. Well, he went missing, and this is the guy who sacrificed him, and they found his body at a ranch, along with however many others buried on his ranch. And he had a cauldron, which what they're saying that he would bury their stuff in belief that I guess they call it La Santa Muerte or something, would protect them from being caught, being killed. So he constantly needed to feed the belief system there. His profile says Costanzo, a bisexual male citizen of the U.S. Costanzo completed 12 years of school, received a high school diploma. Costanzo was single. He had at least one, but maybe others, according to his mother. I don't know what that means, but okay. Hello, everybody. This is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping on in and taking a look. I hope you find something that interests you, something that intrigues you, or something that even tickles your analytical mind. This channel, I try to make it about facts. I try to make it about situations that people can understand rather than things that can be totally speculatory or conspiracy. If I do use some situations as speculatory, I try to use my own life because I have lived a life, that hasn't been that perfect because I'm not perfect. So, you know, I try to I try to ingest my own situation so that I can give insight on what I'm talking about. Today I decided to talk about voyeurism, or is it stalking? In the Idaho 4K, that's what I'm going to be talking about today as well, because it's been a huge topic about Brian Koberger supposedly had stalked the individuals on social media, and also that he rode by their house at least 12 times before the murder. So I want to get an understanding of what the difference between stalking and voyeurism, or if they go hand in hand. So if you like what I present, please leave a comment, please leave a like, or subscribe, or tell your friends about my channel and see if they can find something of interest over here. And if I get enough subs, hopefully one day I'll be able to go live and we'll be able to talk about certain situations like this live instead of just using the recorded videos. I'm going to start by sharing an article that was about 6 years old. Even though it's 6 years old, I'm sure the information has not been outdated because it's stuff that's been talked about for decades and decades. Stalking just didn't begin, and there's certain things that stalking behavior should be um, placed as criminalistic, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so stalking behavior has been identified in 9 to 10 murders studied by criminologists as part of the research examining a link between the two crimes. The 6-month study at the University of Gloucestershire found stalking was present in 94% of the 358 cases of criminal homicide they looked at. Surveillance activity, including covert watching, was recorded 63% of the time. The Susie Lampall Trust, which runs the National Stalking Helpline, warned the failure to take action on stalking could lead to an escalation in violence and potentially death. It is called on court to recognize stalking as a broader problem and pattern of behavior. The chief executive of the trust, Rachel Griffin, says stalking is an obsession which can increase in risk and severity and need to be addressed under early intervention model. Okay, let's continue on. It's talking about what the charity does. Um, they try to pilot intervention programs and focus on the fixation of the stalker. According to the researchers, 85% of homicides occurred in the victim's home. A Dr. Smith, a former police officer turned criminologist, found that almost every case the killer displayed the obsessive, fixated behavior associated with stalking. So let's look at that a minute. You know, It's been stated in numerous articles, and I think News Nation reported on it, and some others. Even during the trial, not trial, but like some of the appearances before the judge, I remember seeing one on court TV where it stated Brian Koberger stalked the victims on social media, on Instagram or something of that sort. So that's online stalking. That's the difference between pulling up to the house and sitting there with your binoculars looking in the window, or even walking up to the house, peeping inside, looking in, see what you can find. If he did have an obsessive um, connection to one of the victims, or maybe more than one of the victims, I'm sure he did find out exactly where this house was rather quickly. And as you could see on the victim's social media pages, they did post a lot about their lives. They posted a lot of pictures. They posted a lot of things that many people generally do on a daily basis. There's nothing they did that was any different than what many people do on a daily basis. So 85% of homicides occur in the victim's home. That is a huge number. Stalking could present itself as acts such as rearranging a victim's garden furniture, sending unwanted gifts, loitering on the pavement outside their house, or even calling social services to maliciously report poor parenting. Okay, I never knew this, so this is interesting to me. Acts of rearranging a victim's garden furniture, unwanted gifts, or loitering in the pavement outside their house, or even calling social services. I know this is speculation here, but I'm gonna step out on that limb and hope it doesn't break. Could Brian have been the one that called the noise complaints? Could he have been the one that observed how quickly the police got there? Who answered the door and which perimeter the door was answered? How easily it was to get in and out of that location? Because it says, stalkers can even call social services to tell on the person they're stalking about how terrible of a parent they are. So why couldn't they call the police? Why wouldn't they call the police for a complaint so that you could really get a good look at who it is that you're stalking? And if you notice in those police cam videos, you saw almost every roommate. You saw Kaylee, you saw Xana, you saw supposedly Bethany. The only ones you didn't see were Maddie and Dylan. Well, Dylan was in the one where you saw Kaylee, but she was running off, you know, when Kaylee came out. So maybe he was watching, exploring how fast calling in a complaint would get these police to show up and what locations they would come and check it out. Because they were called during the day, they were called at night. At one time, it was 2 times in one day. It said Moncton Smith and Susie Lamplow Trust have called on criminal justice professionals to review their approach on assisting risk, so the 1 to 1 million victims of stalking every year can receive greater protection. Practically every case we looked at featured examples of the obsessive fixated behavior that typifies stalking. There's that word again, obsessive, fixated. And you've heard these words when associated with the victims of the crime. The person was fixated on the roommates. The person seem to know these individuals. Sadly, it's too late for the women and children that form part of our research, so we need to do justice in their memory by acting earlier when stalkers are demonstrating these behaviors. Understanding the motivation behind these behaviors and the risk of the present is profoundly important. It says, I hope you appreciated this article. And it continues on to talk about the stalking situation there. Just stop sharing this page. It really wasn't as informative as I thought it was going to be. Let's look at this one on most killers stalk their victims on social media before they do anything to them. This comes from the Daily Mail. It says most killers stalk their victims on social media before murdering them, say criminologists. 6-month study showed a strong correlation between stalking and homicides. Criminologists found stalking behavior present in 94% of the cases they studied. Once again, that 94%. There's that 85% of the murders occurred in the victim's home. Wow. The majority of killers stalk their victims on social media before murdering them. A study of more than 350 homicides suggests. So be careful what you put on social media. I mean, it may seem innocent, and this has been something that's been talked about since the beginning of social media. Be careful what you put on there. It says the results of a 6-month study claim that it's a strong correlation between some key stalking behaviors and homicides. Criminologists found that stalking was present in 94% of the cases they studied, and surveillance activity was recorded 63% of the time. Escalation of concerning behaviors was identified in 79% of the examples. Other factors highlighted were the isolation of the victim and making threats to kill. The 6-month study at the University of Gloucestershire found that by identifying the intention behind the stalking may reveal supportive opportunities to save lives. According to the researchers, 85% of homicides occurred in the victim's home. There's that number again. And let's read about how this individual did his deal. It says Mills, 49, set up a bogus profile on Facebook and stalked his ex before constantly bombarding her with texts and calls. Police later found Miss Smith's body in Mills' Bracton flat where he had left Oasis Stop the Clock playing on repeat. There's that individual right there. Dr. Jane Monckton Smith found that almost every case the killer displayed the obsessive, there's that word again, fixated behavior associated with stalking. Don't he look like a stalker? You tell me. Stalking could present itself in acts as simple as rearranging a victim's garden. We talked about this earlier. About the social services, unwanted gifts, loitering in and around their homes. With Susie Lamplaw Trust, and we already read that. Obsessive fixated behavior that profiles stalking. It's basically the repetitive article of what we just read. So we'll stop there. I do want to show you 53. I won't show you all 53, but I'll show.
Arrived at Pure Gym in Chatham, Kent, placing his mat next to his ex-girlfriend, Molly McLaren.
The human instinct in you wants to be wrong, and you want to feel as though it is just a coincidence.
Molly, an A-grade student in her second year of university, with a promising career as a fitness instructor and blogger.
Get to the same bit every day. I feel like I'm lagging. Everyone gets that bit. Just got to push through. It is not pretty.
Stimpson, a double glazing salesman from Rochester, with a history of unhealthy relationship breakups that go undetected.
He turned very quickly into this very, very nasty, manipulative character. She was upset every day.
The two would meet through the internet. Stimpson would use his online presence to wage a reign of terror. For 21-year-old Molly McLaren, it's a fresh start. Next week, she starts university and can't wait. Molly is going to study health and fitness at the University of Kent. Like for all young people, uni means hard work, but also new friends, partying, and boys. Freshers Week. After settling in, it's time to explore. Kent University is only 7 miles away from where Molly grew up, but here there are new students from all over the country. In her first lecture, Molly spots a girl looking nervous and goes to speak to her.
We were both on our own, just sort of looking around, sort of that nervous feeling of don't know anyone right now. But there was like this instant connection between us, and we didn't at the time know what that was, but we were just drawn to one another.
Molly's charm means she quickly forms a new group of close friends. They enjoy meeting up and socialising in nearby Chatham. As well as Jennifer, Amelia Davis is part of the group. They all share lectures and a love of exercise.
Molly was very motivating in uni, especially when you were close to her. She really could motivate everyone around her without kind of much trouble. It was kind of just something that came naturally to her, and just always asking funny questions in lectures. All the lecturers say, like, you know, the question she came out with or something she would say is just hilarious, but always just like puts 100% into everything, and that's why she got like, amazing grades.
As well as making new friends and partying, Molly throws herself into study.
I think everybody knew Molly right from Freshers Week in terms of
Normal relationship. They were just chatting. After a while, they started to meet up and then eventually form into a relationship. And I was happy for her because, of course, I'm going to be happy for someone who seemed happy at the time, yeah.
As the weeks pass, Molly and Joshua Stimpson spend more and more time together. Meals out, nights drinking, and a shared love of exercise. For Molly, this is her first serious relationship. A person she can open up to and share secrets with.
They realised that they had what seemed to be quite a lot in common in the sense of kind of the anxiety and the struggles that they'd been through. You know, he'd said to Molly that he'd also struggled with anxiety and depression, and they kind of connected on that level, and she almost felt as though she needed to help him through his situation, and he, in turn, was helping her.
Stimpson was raised mainly by his father after his parents divorced and his mother moved to Stoke-on-Trent. During childhood, he'd been treated for depression. But what Molly and her friends don't realise is that there's far more to Stimpson's past than he's letting on.
She said that she had a bit in common because the person she'd met had said that he'd had some mental health issues himself, and she said so they could sort of help each other, lift each other up. So at the time I was like, oh, this is really positive for you, Molly. I'm like so glad that you found someone who you can relate to, and that you seem really happy.
They were kind of partners in this dark place that could help each other to see the light on their bad day.
I was very worried because she was just out there with him.
She'd said that he just wasn't listening. He just wasn't taking on board anything that she was saying. When she came home, she was set on breaking up with him.
Radio till 10 p.m. tonight, and let's start.
It's a busy Saturday night in the centre of Maidstone. Molly is out celebrating her 23rd birthday with friends. Although she's been arguing with Stimpson over Facebook Messenger for days, they're still a couple.
He'd come along, and I think the evening was going okay. And then they'd had a little bit of an argument, and she'd just kind of snapped. I think she just ultimately had enough. And she just said she doesn't want to be with him anymore. And yeah, she broke up with him in the nightclub, and he'd become quite aggressive.
Stimpson shouts, "She's finished with me," in front of all their friends.
And I think that was the first time any of her friends had seen any side of him that wasn't just the norm. And then after that, they'd argued quite a lot, and she'd ended up blocking him on social media and any kind of communication platforms.
But for Molly, her family and her friends, a cold and calculated nightmare would now begin. Stimpson starts by attacking her on Facebook.
He'd then started to post malicious content on Facebook that she was then made aware of, because other friends of Molly's still had Stimpson as a contact on Facebook, so she was able to see what he was posting. He'd tried to publicly humiliate her by disclosing information and tagging her family in it so that they would see some of the messages that she'd sent and things that she'd been up to with her friends. So again, it was more about this return of public humiliation that clearly he held her responsible for.
Molly had spent a lot of time creating an online image based around healthy living and fitness.
Everyone gets that bit. Just got to push through. It is not pretty.
Stimpson tries to ruin this, posting that Molly is using cocaine. He tags her family in the posts so they can see them. Molly is distraught.
I saw some of the online abuse. She sent me screenshots of them.
But she has no idea that by doing this, she's letting Stimpson know exactly where she's going to be.
We were in the pub and we were celebrating her enrolment on her PT course. One of our other friends had been promoted. So we decided to go for dinner and have a few drinks.
Suddenly, the evening takes a dramatic turn. Stimpson shows up out of the blue.
He turned up to the bar that we were at with another girl. you know, we sat there and said, oh, how strange. What are the odds? That, you know, maybe he was trying to stay out of your way. But actually, she'd posted a picture of where she was that afternoon, of where she was going when she was getting ready. And then, you know, he turned up. Just what a shame that you'd had to be here to witness him going on another date. And actually, she'd said to us, I'm actually not jealous, and that's how I know I don't love him anymore. So for her, that was confirmation that she'd absolutely made the right decision.
Molly had been trying to put Stimpson out of her mind, but he has other ideas.
Molly had gone to the bar to find out where to pay for her parking, and he'd been at the bar at the same time.
I just sent a message saying, hey, I really hope you're okay, stay away and just make sure you're safe.
She has no idea she's being stalked. The next day, Molly McLaren wakes up early at her home in Cobham, Kent. She gets dressed, leaves the house, and gets into her car. She drives to her gym in Chatham. She wants to record another fitness blog and post it online. Molly is unaware that she's being followed by Joshua Stimpson. Molly arrives at the gym just before 10 a.m. Shortly after, Stimpson enters the car park.
We'd been chatting in the morning, and I'd just said to her, you know, don't worry about him. You know that you've made the right decision, and she was feeling good.
As it's early in the morning, the gym is eerily quiet. Molly has the place virtually to herself. She happily works out, oblivious that Stimpson has followed her again, the second time in 24 hours. He walks into the gym and climbs the stairs. He seems to change his mind and go back down. But he turns back. Molly is startled from her workout. She stares at him, wondering why he's there. She sends Amy a text and photo of Stimpson.
And I'd said to her, I don't think that's right. First of all, he'd turned up at dinner last night. Now he's at the gym.
Molly then works up the courage to talk to him.
She'd said to him, you know, why aren't you at work? And he'd just replied saying, well, I don't think that's any of your business.
Molly's terrified that he's somehow again in exactly the same place as her.
The human instinct in you wants to be wrong, and you want to feel as though it is just a coincidence.
Amy is really worried. Together they try to work out how Stimpson knew Molly was there.
Did you post anywhere that you were going to the gym? Was my first reaction. She'd said that she hadn't put anything on Facebook or Instagram, that she was filming stuff for uni. No one could have known she was there.
But suddenly, Stimpson leaves. Molly is now completely alone and unsure what to do next. She texts Amy.
I'd said to her, you know, maybe you should just leave. Just take yourself out of the situation. She'd phoned her mum and told her mum what was going on. And her mum had given her the same advice as well, which was to leave, to go straight home. And he'd been driving around the car park waiting for her to leave.
Molly gets her belongings together and texts Amy again.
And I'd replied to her saying, you know, don't speak to him, just get out. You know, something's not right, just leave. She said, I'm walking to my car now. And I'd replied to her saying, don't worry about him, he's a psycho.
As Molly gets to her car, she's unaware that Stimpson is in the car park.
She'd read the message and never replied. I assumed that she was driving home.
23-year-old Molly McLaren is being stalked by her ex-boyfriend, Joshua Stimpson. He's been harassing her and she's reported him to the police. But terrifyingly, over the last 24 hours, he's followed her to 2 separate locations. First, a night out with friends, and he makes a plea for manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility.
It was just a really horrible time, because you just think to yourself, how could he possibly walk away with this with manslaughter? I just don't know how we're all going to live with that.
At the trial, it's revealed Stimpson has a history of stalking other women.
So in court, it was quite difficult to listen to some of Stimpson's previous encounters with women. He was known to the police for threatening behaviour. He'd sent messages to one of the girls saying that he would fly to where she was on holiday and drown her. He'd been suspected of slashing her tyres outside her house. He'd also had another encounter with a local girl around turning up at her flat unannounced and being in the same nightclubs that she was in and waiting outside for her. And he'd also spat in her face in a nightclub.
The jury take less than 4 hours to return a unanimous verdict. They convict Joshua Stimpson of murder, and he's sentenced to life in prison without parole. The judge said during sentencing that Stimpson was a highly dangerous young man who would pose a very considerable risk to women in the future. Five months later, Rochester Cathedral hosts the graduation ceremony for Molly McLaren's university year. The main hall is packed, and there are 2 guests of honour in the audience: Molly's parents.
Most Honourable Chancellor, it is with great sadness that I now invite Doug and Joanne McLaren to accept the award of undergraduate diploma in Sports and Exercise for Health, awarded posthumously to Molly McLaren.
The victim of the attack yesterday at the Dockside Shopping Centre has been named as 23-year-old Kent University student Molly McLaren from Cobham near Gravesend. Now, Joshua Stimpson from near Rochester has been charged with murder and appeared before magistrates in